Our story begins in hyperspace as Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi is stored away, hiding in a storage area inside of Padme Amidala's royal starship. Obi-Wan was trying to pass the time by closing his eyes and meditating, but he simply could not find peace in this moment. Everything that he loved turned upside down, all thanks to the Jedi that he personally trained. The Jedi that he promised to Qui-Gon that he would train. Obi-Wan could feel the dark side. The worst emotions were calling out to him, telling him that he failed, that the Jedi were weak, he was weak, and the only way to ever defeat Anakin was by matching his darkness. But perhaps Obi-Wan's greatest secret was that he was no stranger to the dark side. Whether it was when Qui-Gon died, when Satine died, or now, when the brotherhood between him and Anakin died, Obi-Wan could always reject the dark. He was a true Jedi, and he wouldn't let this failure take away who he was. Obi-Wan knew that Anakin was now a Sith. Yoda was right. The boy he trained is gone, replaced by this Darth Vader. And so, as Obi-Wan reaffirmed that he is indeed a Jedi, and always will be, the ship emerged from hyperspace and descended down into the lava planet. Obi-Wan felt his lightsaber on his belt, and he readied himself for what was ahead. He and Anakin have dueled thousands of times in training. This would be the ultimate test between them. The ship landed, and Obi-Wan waited as Padme ran down the ramp. There was a vent in this storage closet that Obi-Wan cracked open, and he could hear the conversation between Padme and Anakin. She was telling him to stop this madness, to come with her, leave everything behind, and just be with her and the child. Obi-Wan could feel Anakin in the Force. He was darker than anything Kenobi had felt before. Maul, Dooku, Ventress, it didn't matter. Anakin had truly turned to the dark side. Obi-Wan slid open the door to reveal himself, when suddenly, inexplicably, something changed. The dark feeling in the Force that was Anakin suddenly just faded, and on the landing pad below, Padme had told Anakin that she doesn't recognize him anymore, and as Anakin looked up at his crying wife, something hit him. Everything he has done, every dark deed, every kill, all of it was for himself. He never truly thought of her. Anakin allowed himself to let go of the darkness just for a moment, falling to his knees as memories from the temple flooded back to him. He just looked at Padme and asked what he has done. Padme took a deep breath, and she told Anakin that they need to get out of here. Get Anakin somewhere safe, away from Palpatine. Obi-Wan inside the ship could not believe it. It was as if just seeing and hearing Padme flipped a switch in Anakin. And so Obi-Wan snuck back into the storage area. He would have to readjust his strategy as Anakin and Padme entered the ship together. Anakin's head was still spinning as he sat down next to Padme as the ship began to rise up. He remembered every single kill. He remembered the power that came from it. The darkness called to him again, reminding Anakin that he needs the darkness to save Padme. And Anakin told himself he could still use the dark side to save her. He finished his mission here on Mustafar. The Separatists were dead. He would be with Padme while she gives birth. He would save her, and he would let Palpatine establish the Empire. Soon, once Padme is safe with the child, and the Empire is ready, Anakin knew he could take it over, with Padme by his side. He was honestly not thinking clearly at all, and Padme wasn't speaking to him right now. The tension was thick as the ship jumped into Mustafar. And after a few minutes of silently drifting through hyperspace, Padme finally spoke, quietly asking Anakin if it is true. Did he kill innocent Jedi in the temple? Innocent children? Anakin opened his mouth to speak. He wasn't sure what he was going to say, but then he felt something in the Force. The feeling of the Force on Mustafar had been dark, hot, and strong. But now, on this ship, he felt something else. It was a presence. Padme again asked if it was true, but Anakin stood up and said they're not here alone. Anakin angrily asked her who was here, and Padme just shook her head in confusion. Anakin ignited his lightsaber, and he began slowly moving through the ship. And inside of the storage room, Obi-Wan heard the lightsaber ignite, and he closed his eyes in frustration. Of course Anakin felt his presence. They've been together for over a decade. Obi-Wan grabbed his lightsaber, and he silently waited for Anakin to find him. A confrontation was of course inevitable. Anakin moved through the ship, one area at a time, until he came upon a storage door tucked away. He slowly lifted his hand, then used the Force to open it up. But within a second of opening the door, Obi-Wan Kenobi lunged out, tackling Anakin to the floor. Anakin's lightsaber tumbled away as Obi-Wan ignited his right at Anakin's neck, telling him to yield or he will do what he must. And just like that, Anakin was again burning with rage. Everything Padme did to pull him back to the light was undone in a second. As Anakin stared into Obi-Wan's eyes, Anakin waved his hand to close the storage door, and it slammed into Kenobi's ankle. This distraction allowed Anakin to flip Obi-Wan off of him, call his lightsaber back into his hands, and slam it down on his former master. Obi-Wan was on the floor now, and he blocked the strike, holding the blades together. Anakin was pressing down. Obi-Wan could feel the ozone of the saber as it nearly pressed down into his cheek. Obi-Wan managed to move his head just enough, so Anakin's saber stabbed into the floor next to him. And then he grabbed Anakin's wrist, twisted the saber out of his hands. Obi-Wan had a clean opening to end this. He wasn't sure if he'd be able to do it, but the decision was made for him. A stun blast rang out from a blaster, hitting Anakin as he dropped to the floor, knocked out cold. Obi-Wan turned to see Padme, hands shaking in fear and sadness, and Obi-Wan was about to thank her when she fired another stun blast right into his chest, and Kenobi fell hard next to Anakin. Padme leaned against the wall, and both R2-D2 and C-3PO were too stunned to speak. Padme eventually made her way to the communications console, punching in Bail Organa's code. After a bit, Bail would answer and tell Padme that she can find him and Yoda on Polis Massa. This was good, as the stress of everything going on was causing Padme to go into labor. The ship would indeed find its way to Polis Massa, and almost immediately, a group of Alderaan security guards ran on board with Yoda behind them, as Anakin was placed into force-restraining cuffs, and his unconscious body was carried out of here and would be placed inside of the small but useful prison cell around this facility. This cell was an isolated room outside of the facility, so if Anakin were to try and break out, he would immediately be met by the suffocating air of space. Padme was hurried inside of the medical facility, and Obi-Wan was woken up by Yoda, so Yoda could ask what had happened here. Obi-Wan gave the full recap before the two of them went inside to make sure Padme was alright. And out in space, Anakin Skywalker would slowly begin to wake up, with nothing around him except for a ray shield door and open space around his cell. In the distance, he could see the large medical facility, and Anakin immediately remembered Padme. A sickening feeling rose up in him as he realized what was going on. Padme was going to give birth. She was going to die. Anakin began slamming his hands into the wall, yelling out that she needs him. She's going to die without him. But no one was listening. There was, of course, a security camera in the room, but Anakin felt completely hopeless and alone. He had no choice but to sit here and contemplate how he failed to protect her, how Obi-Wan stopped him from protecting her. Anakin would sit here until a tunnel extended out from the facility and connected to the ray shield door that he was stuck inside of. Anakin watched as a group of people walked towards him. Bail Organa, 4 Alderaan security guards, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Padme. And next to Padme was a pod with life forms that Anakin could sense. 2 of them. Anakin anxiously ran to the door, and Padme solemnly said they have twins. And it was this moment that Anakin realized everything was a lie. Padme had been able to survive childbirth because she knew Anakin was alive, and she'd hoped that maybe there was still good in him, and this hope kept her going today. Anakin's mind flashed back to the moment that he cut down Windu inside of Palpatine's office, all because Palpatine promised that he was the only one who could save Padme's life. And it turns out that Palpatine may have been the greatest danger after all. Anakin didn't have the words. He knew he should apologize, but there was no apology that could ever make up for what he has done. He saw his lightsaber clipped to Obi-Wan's belt, and he knew the horrific acts that he committed with the saber inside the temple. He just looked at Padme, Yoda, then Obi-Wan, and he asked to help make this right. Yoda had just faced Darth Sidious, and he lost. He knew deep down that their only hope to defeat Sidious was Anakin, the chosen one. Yoda knew the right move. Perhaps the only move is to fight Sidious again with Anakin by his side. Before coming out here to face Anakin, Yoda and Obi-Wan had discussed whether they could trust him to do what was right. And Obi-Wan said that everything Anakin does is for Padme. He slaughtered the temple for her. He will have no problem fighting Darth Sidious if it is to protect her. And now as the 2 Jedi stared at Anakin, they could feel his agony. The darkness was fading away. So, the ray shield door was released, and Anakin scrambled over to the pod to look down at his children. The only thing that now mattered to him was protecting the twins. So he looked to Yoda and Kenobi, and he told them that he will help. And Anakin proposed that they go back to Mustafar. He will contact Sidious, tell him that Obi-Wan is dead, and he took so long to contact Sidious because Padme arrived on the planet and has gone into labor. Anakin continued on, saying that he will tell Sidious that he needs his help keeping Padme alive. and Sidious will surely want to be there to make sure that the future of the Sith, Anakin's children, do indeed survive the birth. It was a fine plan, and before long, the two Jedi and Anakin would get into Padme's ship and take off for Mustafar. Soon, the stars of hyperspace were twisting endlessly just outside of the ship, and Anakin was seeing none of them. He sat alone, quiet, eyes forward, and his thoughts churned like a storm. The dark side was still clinging to him. It always would. Whispers of rage, promises of power, but they felt hollow. The screams of the younglings haunted him, echoing louder than any Sith teachings. He'd murdered his Jedi family, his friends. He burned the galaxy, all for a lie. For her. And yet, Padme was alive. The children were alive. It was the only thread keeping him tethered to sanity. He didn't expect forgiveness. He didn't even deserve it. But he could begin to make up for what he has done. Anakin softly muttered that he doesn't want revenge, and it was more to himself than the others. He spoke again, saying he just wants peace and protection for his family, and he won't hesitate to do what must be done versus Darth Sidious. Behind him, Obi-Wan Kenobi leaned against the wall, arms folded, brow heavy with guilt. His heart was warring within itself. Hatred, sorrow, regrets, he felt all of them. He just watched Anakin slaughter Jedi on the security recordings. And now, he sat just a few meters away, like nothing had happened. But everything had happened. Padme's survival had changed something, forced Obi-Wan to believe, against his better judgment, that there might still be a flicker of light inside of his former Padawan. Still, every time he looked at Anakin, he saw the temple in flames. He thought about his brother, that his former brother did that. He couldn't bear to speak with Anakin, and he knew that if Anakin fell again, he would be the one to finish it, for real this time. Yoda sat alone at the front of the ship, eyes closed but burdened. The Force was wounded, scarred by the betrayal from Anakin, clouded by the Clone War. Yoda had lived centuries, seen darkness rise many times, but this was so much different. Darth Sidious had not just destroyed the Jedi, he'd hollowed out the Republic from within, turned the very heart of democracy into his own empire. Yoda had failed to see it. They all had. And now, the last remnants of the Jedi Order, at least the ones that weren't in hiding, the Grand Master, a Council Master, and one fallen knight, were on their way to face evil at its roots. Yoda didn't know if Anakin could be redeemed. The pain around him was still sharp, raw, and dangerous, but there was love there. There was regret, resolve, and as the ship dropped out of hyperspace into the fire-lit orbit of Mustafar, all three of them were prepared to fight, knowing they may not return, but certain they had no other choice. The ship landed, and the three of them moved inside, as Anakin awkwardly stepped over the slaughtered bodies of the Separatist leaders that he killed just hours before. Yoda and Obi-Wan looked down at the Separatists. Their enemies for years were now just completely wiped out with ease. Anakin would go on to contact Darth Sidious, lying to him about Obi-Wan being dead, but Padme being here without medical assistance as she goes into labor. Sidious was silent for a long moment, trying to decipher through the Force what was truly going on. But finally, he told Anakin that he will be coming there with a medical capsule and enough doctors to make sure she is safe. Anakin ended the message, and now they waited. It would be about an hour until they all felt it at the same time. Darth Sidious had arrived, and his shuttle slowly descended down to the landing pad. When the doors opened, Sidious stood alone after telling the medical staff to stay back, as he ensures everything here is as Anakin described it. Sidious looked out to the Mustafar building, robes out in the searing winds of Mustafar. Molten rivers below hissed and spat, as if recoiling from his presence itself. The Dark Lord stood still, yellow eyes narrowing, as he looked towards the facilities, and much to Sidious's dismay, 3 Jedi would step into view: Yoda, Obi-Wan, and the broken figure of Anakin Skywalker. A tremor passed through the Force, and without a word or hesitation, Sidious turned to the medical team behind him, raising up his hands. Lightning arced from his fingertips in every direction, vaporizing the doctors in a second. There would be no witnesses to what followed, just an end to the war, and Sidious ignited his blade and launched forward in a blur. Yoda, Kenobi, and Skywalker readied themselves, and then their sabers clashed beneath Mustafar's boiling sky. Sidious moved beyond human limits. His strikes came fast, fractured, forcing the trio to separate under the assault. Sidious pushed Yoda and Anakin away, then flipped out onto a narrow catwalk, where Obi-Wan was dueling him, nearly slipping down as Sidious battered him backwards, each swing a clap of hatred. Anakin leapt in to counter, driving the Sith Lord away, just as Yoda attacked from behind again, green blade humming. The duel swept across the platform, into the main complex. Glass was shattering, metal was buckling under their feet. Lava explosions outside the room illuminated their chaos, as Sidious twisted, forcing them apart once more. They fought through winding hallways, slicing through the structure's blackened walls. Sidious used the Force to rip consoles from the ground, flinging debris like missiles, collapsing walkways beneath their feet. The Jedi adapted. Obi-Wan parried and countered, ducking under a surge of lightning. Anakin matched Sidious in power, pressing forward again and again. Yoda, though the smallest, struck the hardest of the three of them, blades swinging around with purpose. And together, they pushed towards the far ridge, over the industrial bridges spanning a lake of fire. And there, above the lava rivers, the fight reached its most frenzied moment as Sidious grinned, firing lightning in one hand, swinging his saber in the other, as he met Yoda mid-leap with a vicious strike. Anakin and Obi-Wan watched as Yoda was finally defeated. Sidious's saber pierced his chest, and he fell into the lava below, but his body seemed to disappear before he could actually hit the lava. Obi-Wan fell to his knees in horror, and Sidious came closing in with a triumphant laugh. The red blade rose for the final strike to kill Kenobi, but Anakin was there. He threw himself between them, blocking the killing blow with a roar of effort. Sabers locked in a storm of sparks, as Sidious snarled, pushing Anakin back, but the Chosen One was not giving in. Obi-Wan rose back up, rejoining the fight with a renewed focus, and together, the two of them, Skywalker and Kenobi, overwhelmed the Sith Lord, forcing him back with a relentless attack. Anakin ducked, spun, and delivered a devastating slash across Sidious's torso. Obi-Wan followed through, severing his saber hand. Sidious staggered backwards, crashing hard right into a wall, and then Anakin drove his saber through the Sith Lord's heart, exploding the wall behind him as well. Sidious screamed out in anger as his body collapsed, lifeless, into the lava below. The fire roared around them as Sidious was consumed in the lava. The nightmare was over, and in time, perhaps the Jedi could rise up again. Anakin turned to Obi-Wan, saying it's time to go back. But Obi-Wan lifted his blade up to Anakin's chin. Obi-Wan told his former friend that he died here today fighting Sidious. Anakin Skywalker sacrificed himself to defeat Sidious and save the galaxy from the Empire. Anakin tilted his head in confusion, asking Obi-Wan what was going on. And Obi-Wan told Anakin he can never return to his old life after what he has done. If he does, he and the children will be hunted down because of Anakin's crimes. Obi-Wan told Anakin that if he wants to live the rest of his life outside of a cell, without worrying about the safety of his family, then he will run, and he will never show his face again. Obi-Wan was clearly holding back a tsunami of emotions as he told Anakin to go, and Anakin knew he was right. He looked down at his lightsaber, and he threw it into the lava below, before giving Obi-Wan a final nod, and walking off into the distance of Mustafar. He would find his own way out of here, and restart his life, knowing he saved his family. In the aftermath of Sidious's death, the galaxy found itself teetering between relief and ruin. The Republic was back without a chancellor for now. The Senate was fractured. Fear was still lingering throughout the galaxy, and it was Bail Organa who stepped forward, with Mon Mothma at his side, and he helped restore order to the Senate, dismantling the emergency powers, outlawing all traces of Palpatine's corruption and influence. The Jedi Order was officially declared lost, except for rumors of Obi-Wan Kenobi traveling to Jeddah, a world once sacred to the Jedi, where he quietly began rebuilding the Order as guardians of peace and light. He found survivors, and he taught them a newer code, forged from the old Jedi. And out across the stars, remnants of Palpatine's regime clung to power in the Outer Rim, but they were quickly dying out. The Sith were gone. Padme learned that Anakin gave his life to defeat the Sith, and this gave her great emotional pain. But she was glad that Anakin fell while fighting for what was right. In reality, Anakin was not dead, though he had vanished. Anakin returned to the world where he first met Padme, and where his children now played in safety and innocence, Naboo. He took no name, he had no lightsaber, no allegiance, and by day he was hidden down in an abandoned home by the lake all alone. And at night, he became something else. In the streets of Theed, criminals were beginning to vanish. Smugglers, slavers, black market dealers whispered of a ghost who moved faster than sight, whose strikes left no wounds but shattered bones, broke minds. Anakin was using the Force to protect his family in secret. And of course, the darkness was never truly gone. One rainy night, Anakin had felt a shiver through the Force, Darth Maul was here, seeking out the Skywalker children. He descended on Naboo with a gang of pirates, carving a path towards Padme's home. Anakin intercepted him in the forests, under the moonlight, without armor, without a saber, and the duel was brutal, Maul's red blade flashing red through the streets. But Anakin moved with power, using only the Force, throwing Maul into trees, ripping the earth beneath his feet, breaking his saber mid-swing. Maul had lunged for a killing blow, but Anakin caught him mid-air, crushing his body, killing Maul once and for all. Padme and the twins would never know how close they'd come to capture or death, and Anakin would watch his children from afar. He had never found any real peace. He did find purpose, though. He would never be free of his past, but on Naboo, in the quiet corners of a healing galaxy, he found something close to redemption, protecting those that he loved. And folks, that is our story for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I did. It was definitely more, I don't know, traditional, if that's the right word. Basic, I guess. Sometimes I really branch out, and I did consider going kind of nuts on this one with some stuff, but I don't know. Overall, I thought we'd keep it pretty standard, and you reunite Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, have them take on Sidious. I always enjoy doing Mustafar battles that aren't Anakin, Obi-Wan, just because, I don't know, it's an awesome battleground, you know? What's better than lava, right? So, really enjoyed just going back there. And, yeah, I mean, Anakin, obviously, I do have stories where he redeems himself after Order 66, you know, even as Vader, but in the end, it's not super realistic because he killed a lot of people, a lot of kids. So, makes more sense for Obi-Wan to be like, hey man, you're dead, alright? You're either gonna be dead or, you know, be arrested. So, Anakin goes off on his own, and I don't know, becomes a sort of vigilante character. I thought that was a fun little angle to take, so hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next video.